you say is the most important thing to get right when you're that guy starting out trying to get to your first million?
That's easy. And I think you've got the perfect solution. And that's knowing your numbers and making sure that you're pricing, bidding, and selling jobs at the appropriate price.
If you're at the 1 million and you kind of feel like, hey, there's more out there, if you had to go back and do that over again, what would be your kind of like your biggest thing that you'd do differently?
I think I would have spent more time understanding truly what my core values were and using that as the compass to lead the team. And then I would also hiring like an external HR company sooner.
Okay.
And I feel like that has been like a huge key to our success in finding good team members.
Wow.
Really, I can hop on a call and say, hey, this is kind of the position that we need. They write up the job ad, they manage my Indeed, and then they go in and they will make all the original contact. They'll sift through all the applicants and resumes. Boop, I get an email saying, here's some qualified candidates. I haven't had one that didn't show up for an interview.
Okay, guys, so this feels a little different. I am sitting in Matt Hiner's Yardist recording studio, but we're recording for currently the top contender for the name we're going to call this podcast. We haven't even settled on this yet, is the cost of doing business. So we wanted to do something a little more like, not just know your numbers, but the cost of doing business. And you can go a lot of different directions with that, like the cost of doing business poorly, the cost of doing business well, all those different things. So, but anyway, I'm Weston Zimmerman, your host, and I'm sitting here with Matt Hiner out here in Colorado Springs in Colorado. Just flew in here earlier today. We're spending some awesome time together, doing some team building, learning water features, and just learning off of each other as peers, rubbing elbows and getting better together. So thanks for having me on here, or thank you for letting me record in your studio, Matt.
Yeah, no, you're on the road. I'm like, let's just, how can we make this a win-win for us both and tag team this,
Yeah.
You were just on mine and now I get to be on yours. And so, yeah, this is awesome. I really appreciate you flying out to Colorado Springs, and we're going to build some waterfalls later this week and get to know each other a little bit better. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to the next couple of days. This is going to be a fun time. I got to say, like, I have personally been really impressed with what you've achieved. And I'm going to say the last, 5 years. Like, you've gone, I'm just paraphrasing it in my short words.
Yeah.
You've gone from the stereotypical standard, about $1 million landscape contractor to building, you're building the business that provides the service, the outdoor living space, as opposed to you being the person, the contractor that builds the living space.
I feel like I've made a conscious switch in the last 5 years from my product that I'm building is the backyard and the landscape to my product that I'm building is essentially the business and the machine that we're building, so that way we can plug people in and help even more people enjoy a better life outside.
Yeah, I can see that in everything you're doing, like just the projects we were looking at with your design catalogs, what you were showing me outside with your Hiner & Co., right?
Hiner & Co.
Yeah,
that's the new the new spin-off brand.
Like, just incredible vision that you have, and I can 100% see what you just said. Like, you're building the business, that's your project, as opposed to building the space itself.
Yeah.
And you're employing a team of people around you that are building incredible spaces. Can't wait to see someone in person, because I've been looking at them on your Instagram for forever.
Yeah, no, we're definitely going to make some time to go see some.
Yeah.
And you're going to get to see the backdrop that makes them look even better, because let's face it, the backyards are nice, but having those mountains in the background are what really push them over the top.
It just gives it a vibe that just you can't replicate any other way. Like, you have a real palette to work with.
I like to call it the equivalent of beachfront property, but Rocky Mountain, Colorado style.
There you go. I love it. And I love mountains. I'm more of a mountain guy than a beach guy anyway. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's kick it off. So of course, this is funny because, like, I was just in your podcast. You introduced me to your audience, but probably everybody in my audience already knows who you are. But let's follow the formality here. Let's go ahead and introduce yourself. Tell me, like I always ask, like, tell me your story. What is the story of Matt Hiner?
I'm just a regular dude. I was born in California, moved to Colorado Springs when I was 8 years old. My parents moved me out here. Was always just kind of that misfit at school. Never really felt like I fit in. Took me 4 years to get through middle school, just because I did sixth grade twice, just held myself back to relearn some of the things, but more so just escape some of the bullying, and really just found my way in going to work once I got to high school, and just landscaping, and just kind of, that was always my escape, was just being outdoors and getting to work and having some money and just doing things. And my dad was there, so I got to learn from him, and at least there in the beginning. And I just remember being on a job site. I was driving skid steers before I even had my learner's permit, and just pulling trailers and learning to back up trailers. And so like I've literally just grown up in this industry from a very young, early age. And I remember my parents always telling me that I was always just artistic, and I used to always draw. And so just marrying the the artistry of just natural creativity and landscaping is just kind of ultimately how I created the Artist. So
okay, so if it's like I've already alluded to, Matt has his own podcast called The Artist, right?
Yep.
So that there's a lot more behind, like, kind of the beginnings of Hiner Outdoor Living in your first episode on your podcast that I just listened to.
I go in great detail with that.
Yes. So if you want to get more into the nitty gritty, like all the battles, I would just call them, like, I definitely encourage you to go check that out. That episode, the first episode on Matt Hiner's podcast. It's quite the story. Let's
just say I was not the typical go to school and learn it. I have to drag myself through doing it wrong several times and make the pain big enough to actually find the right solution and plug that in and not do it again.
Yeah.
So,
man.
But I'm happy to go into as much detail as you want here.
Well, let's frame it this way. What was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome in your journey of being a business owner, and now you're building a team? And what would you point? I'm sure there's hundreds, but pick one out.
There's tons, and it's different every season of your life, and every season of your business and your professional growth brings new and different challenges. Because I if you recall that first season I was in business working for that retired Air Force engineer, and just being drugged through that at that time of my life, that was the biggest challenge I'd ever dealt with. Just having to learn firsthand what it's like to have the worst kind of client you could ever imagine. But then getting through that and surviving that, you just level up, basically. Because what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, and you're only a failure if you just quit. And so, the perseverance of just continuing to just keep going is just what makes you win eventually. But I would say the biggest challenge, that was probably 4 or 5 years ago now.
Okay.
When I had sold what at the time was probably a massive water feature job for us. And I sold it in about May with the expectation that they needed it done in June, July, because they were under a strict deadline. And I had that schedule availability. And at the time, we were still a crew and a half. We were about $1 million a year in revenue business. And I sold the job. And long story short, they kept pushing me back about 2 weeks at a time.
You mean the homeowner?
The client. Yeah, the client. This was a commercial water feature job. It was about $150K.
Okay.
And it was huge. It was like a 250-foot commercial stream that I designed in a wetland and all kinds of features to make it really low maintenance. At this time, we were certified Aquascape contractor. And so I was implementing all the things to make this a really high quality water feature. And it was for a luxury like a luxury hotel area, so I wanted it to look good, and so I was bringing my best deal. I sell it, and they're going for it, and I collect the deposit and the down payment, and I order all my stuff. It was about 30-40 grand worth of materials, and so I've got that, and we're ready to go. And as we're about ready to mobilize, they tell us, "Hey, we need to push you back a couple weeks. We're not quite ready for you. We need to get a few things ready on the job site before you can come in." I'm like, okay. So I scramble and I find 2 weeks worth of work. 2 weeks comes by. Oh, we need another couple weeks. I'm like, what? Okay. I thought we needed to get this done. All right. So I was reacting to the situation every single time. And long story short, they did that to me for about 2 months. They pushed me back about two weeks at a time. And this entire time I'm reacting. I'm trying to be like available to these guys. Because one, this is one of the biggest jobs, I'd ever sold. And I wanted to execute and have the pictures and just prove to myself that we could do it. But then I was finding myself in a reactive state, having to fill the next 2 weeks of the calendar on a whim and just keep my guys busy.
Kidding.
And I was just like getting a little frustrated. And then it gets to about August, right? We should have been done with the project. And they've done this 2-3 weeks at a time, just pushing me back. I had mobilized to this job twice already. And they're like, we're going to have to punt till fall. Sorry. I was like, are you serious? And so I'm like trying to figure out, because at this time I'm telling people, I'm turning away work because people are calling and they're like, oh, well, I've got this big job and I'm not available for 8 weeks, because at the time it was going to take us 8 weeks and nobody wanted to wait that long because it was early spring when I'd sold this. And so, people, I've lost out on all these opportunities. It's now August and I'm like, now, all right, so you want to wait till the fall time? All right, I'll just make it work. You're the customer. I'll just accommodate. And like, I never raised a fuss to them or anything. I just took it in the shorts, basically. And long story short, I'm reacting the entire season. I'm trying to find things. I'm keeping guys busy. Like, I don't want, just because of my lack of ability to sell, I still kept them busy. And so they were still getting 40. And so I wasn't being profitable at all that year.
Yeah.
And we get to the fall and they say, we're going to actually postpone this till next year. And I'm like, this was going to be my saving grace at this point, because I've had a crappy year. At least I have something in the winter to keep the guys busy.
Unbelievable.
And I was like, so now it's next spring. So now I'm like, all right, now I got to figure out what I'm doing all winter. And then 2 weeks before Christmas, they just cancel the contract and go with a competitor altogether.
You've got to be kidding me.
And now I've had probably the worst revenue year I've had in my life. We've been in business for 7 years at this point. So like, I'm somewhat established, but that was the first winter and the only time I'd ever missed a payroll, because like I was just reacting the entire time. And this was right before, I think this was right before I met you at the Logan Paul deal. Wow. I remember going out to lunch with Tom Reber, because I was kind of halfway working with him at the time. And I felt beat, because the entire year they were just doing this and I was reacting the entire year. I had no work. I felt like I let everybody down. He basically just asked me, what are you going to do about it?
What'd you end up doing?
I just went all in on social media, and I just...
So you just left that go?
I just fostered that anger, and I put it towards just not letting it ever happen again.
And that's where I met you at Logan Paul, and I looked up a year later and you had like tens of thousands of followers.
I'm the type of person where if you want me to do something, just tell me I can't do it.
Then it's like lighting a fire.
It's game on. Yeah, I am going to make sure that I prove you wrong.
Yeah.
At any cost.
Unbelievable. That's incredible.
And so that was probably the hardest thing that's ever happened to me.
Did anything change after that in the way that you handled yourself, or the way that the requirements you made your clients? Like, did anything change from that? Or?
So I'm the type of person where I am constantly, like I believe there's no such thing as losing. There's winning and there's learning. And so that one I couldn't figure out for the longest time. What was the lesson? Like, what was the takeaway? I thought I did everything right. I thought I was pricing it right, doing a good job, being a good servant to the client. And it's like, you know what? At the end of the day, what I learned is it's my company and it's my schedule. And yes, I am here to do all those things, but I'm going to feed myself first. And if I'll let you do something like that to me once, then you go to the back of the line.
Yeah.
And there's no...
Because they were totally kicking you around like a football.
Yeah.
They were doing whatever they wanted.
Exactly, and I let it happen.
Yeah. And so to Tom Reber's question, what are you going to do about it? I'm assuming, putting words in your mouth based on what I've heard, is like you would tell that client at the second time, like, hey, you can do this, just know that it puts you at the end of my line, which is 3 months out or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that's a good lesson. Is like especially in the early years of business, like we want to please, we want to succeed, we want to overcome,
Yep.
and we just
And you
let
don't necessarily have that next job. And
Yeah.
this at the time felt like a huge opportunity for us to just do a big project and have a big water feature in our portfolio. And,
yeah, I can totally
and so like
see
that carrot was just so big at the time, and now it's like, you know what?
So you're like, I wouldn't do
No.
this for the average customer, but I'm doing it for this one.
Yeah.
And then
So like,
yeah,
I made every excuse
Yeah.
for them that I could, and I
Wow.
learned that like you can't do that.
yeah, no kidding. So something I wanted to kind of pick your brain on, because I know that you've just lived through this. Like, you have just gone from, that was 4 or 5 years ago. You said you were about a $1 million business at that time.
Yeah.
So you've gone from, say, $1 million business in your first 7-8 years ish
Mhm.
to over the next 4 or 5 years becoming with a sales goal of 5 million this year. What would you say is the most important thing to get right when you're that guy starting out trying to get to your first million in revenue? Like, what would you say at that stage in business? If you had to go back and do it over again, what would you like make sure that I would get this right?
From the very beginning, from day one,
Yeah.
that's easy. And I think you've got the perfect solution, and that's knowing your numbers and making sure that you're pricing, bidding, and selling jobs at the appropriate price.
So, and you could roll up a whole conversation into like head trash around getting that client to, you know.
Yeah, we could dive into this as deep as you want.
Yeah.
Like literally, because I grew up in a not very wealthy family. We were middle to up. We were like middle class
Yeah.
to lower middle class
Yeah.
when I was growing up. My dad taught me good work ethic and all that kind of stuff, but he also taught me everything not to do in business and in self-employment. And so everything in our household was a conversation around money and being expensive and all that kind of stuff. And so I always had this promise I made to myself that I never wanted that to be a conversation in our household. And so I've always focused on just not making that. And that doesn't mean that I go out and buy extravagant things. I just wanted to live within my means, be comfortable, and do the things that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And even though I'm nowhere where I want to be, but it keeps me, I'm still blissfully dissatisfied.
So basically, don't wing it with just like what you're going to charge or
Yeah,
get
and
your
I was
advice from
totally
a
winging
Facebook.
it.
Yeah.
Like the first 3 years that I was selling things, it was 100% like, oh, well, this is how much rock I need. This is how much I need for this. I need this many edging pins, blah, blah, blah. It'll take me about this long. I would pay myself a wage. And heck yeah, I made $1,000. And that would be like $1,000 wage. But never mind what was overhead?
Yeah.
What was any of that stuff?
What was the definition? Wait, what's that word mean?
Like if I would have plugged my stuff into your system now, like, and that was before Facebook groups and where you could go on and even get bad advice from 300 people in Hardscape North America group or anything like that. It would like, I was running blind and I thought I was doing okay because I made $1,000 this week or something.
What finally changed that?
Getting to the end of the year and not having any money and just being beat up from just trying so hard.
Did you like figure out
then,
yourself or like?
No, I actually I ended up hiring this industry consultant called Jim Houston.
Okay, I think I've heard that name.
Yeah, for years he's been a publicist inside of lawn and landscape and just kind of like a landscape industry consultant for numbers. And he had one of the original. It was called the TBS. I can't even remember what it stands for, but that was like. It was like a glorified spreadsheet that would help you know your numbers. And
and you can do all this know your number stuff on a spreadsheet. It's just a lot more manual.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And TBS, I can't even. The bid suite is what it was stood for.
Okay.
And so he had the bid suite, and I paid him like what felt like 2 months worth of salary to come in and just consult, and he just broke it down and helped me put my first budgets together and showed me that I was so far off course. And even then, like, he would give that to me, and his software wasn't near as sophisticated as what SynkedUP is. And like, I still was in disbelief that was the price I needed to sell things at.
Yeah.
It was just,
You look at that number like
you're like, no way. Nobody's going to afford this. Nobody
Yeah.
can pay for this.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. And so, like, if there's one thing I could change, it would have been that mindset and just that relationship that I had with money. or that,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. That makes total sense. And like to hear your story where you invested into a high end coach and help you get over this, like, so there you go. If you're listening in here, like this is the price people paid to figure out how to know their numbers, which today with the internet and
It took
these
me
online courses, like it's
6 years of doing it wrong before I finally got it straightened out.
Yeah. And that's why we exist today. But now the next thing I wanted to ask you is like, okay, so that's your advice for someone in that 0 to 1 million range. What about, like, you've very quickly gone from the 1 to 5. So what would you say, like, hey, if you're at the 1 million and you kind of feel like, hey, there's more out there, like, what would you say if you had to go back and do that over again? What would be your kind of like your biggest thing that you'd do differently, or a mistake that you wouldn't make scaling from 1 to 5?
I think I would have. That's a good question. But I think I would have spent more time understanding truly what my core values were.
Okay.
And owning that better, and using that as the compass to lead the team. And then I would also probably back that up with hiring like an external HR company sooner.
Do you have one now?
I have one now.
Okay.
And I feel like that has been like a huge key to our success in finding good team members.
Wow.
It's kind of like an external recruiter / HR company. And really I can hop on a call and say, hey, this is kind of the position that we need. They help me drop a job description for it. They write up the job ad. They manage my Indeed, like sponsors posts and that kind of stuff. And then they go in and they will make all the original contact. They'll sift through all the applicants and resumes. And then every once in a while, I get an email saying, here's some qualified candidates. I haven't had one that didn't show up for an interview at all. So
that's impressive.
Like, in this
day
and age,
if you're scrolling through any hardscape or landscape Facebook groups right now,
people can't even show up.
They can't even show up for interviews. So,
yeah.
All right, there's a solution for this.
Yeah, and it works a little bit on a higher level of. I certainly have had a much tougher time finding foremen and below.
Yeah.
This certainly works a lot better for more management or office or executive or like our media team is how I found all of them through that way.
Yeah.
And so, but bringing them on, having a strong vision, and using that vision to point us all in the same direction, and then using our core values as our compass is.
That's interesting.
Was the huge transition for me to get from 1 to 5.
It's interesting, like, because as you're describing that, I'm like, I'm nodding my head because I'm thinking about Tussie and how they went the journey, like what it looked like when they went from 1 to 5.
Yeah. Well, when you're at 1 and you're the owner, you literally have a physical pulse on everything that's going on in your business. And when you start to scale, like you lose that touch.
That's right.
And you don't, like, there's now customers that I've never even met before, but you have to know whether you're going in the right direction, and the numbers are going to tell that story.
Yeah.
I just talked about like how I lead that team and how I get there, and that's by building the people, and the people will build the company. But you do have to have a foundational understanding of what your numbers are, have the appropriate reporting systems in there, so that way you can look at the right things. So I can quickly get a snapshot of how we are performing as a company just by looking at a few key metrics.
What's a metric you track?
I'm from a sales standpoint, I'm going to look at backlog. I'm going to look at leads. I'm going to look at close ratios. I'm going to look at, just the gross profits and all those kinds of things, the man hours that we have backlogged. But then on the production side of things, I'm going to be looking at gross profit. And then every week we sit down and we go over all of our job costing and all of our sales pipeline and all of our work orders. And we just, I get a good pulse on how we're operating as a company that way. I can also get a good pulse on how we're doing just based on like the 5-star reviews, because we're sending out all those things. And if people are giving us reviews, I know that we're doing that. You also need to create checklists. When you go from having a pulse on everything and you have it a certain way that you do business, you need to spend some time and write out step by step by step by step. What are those things? What are those boxes that have to be checked in order for you? What are those non-negotiables for you to know that you provided your best service.
Yeah.
For me, I've got all of those in a checklist. I've got those for a water feature. I've got those for a pre-job checklist. I've got a post-job checklist. I've got project management. Like, here are all the things that we need to have a successful project, to make sure that the client got downloaded with all those things. Did you receive your homeowner's manual that we spent months creating?
Yeah, exactly.
Did we give you the tools? Did we teach you how to change your, reprogram your irrigation clock? Because right now it's going to water every day this many days. Do you understand, like, this is your wean off period for the sod? Like, with a water feature, do you understand how to take care of it? Do you understand how a service, like, all these things?
Yeah.
You gotta train
These are all the things
people.
that you probably never even put any like formal thought to at the $1 million mark.
But it's like, how are you going to download and offload out of your brain into somebody else's?
Yeah, that's exactly
And
right.
so you got to think of, like, the flow chart of everything in your company, of how is that going to go together, so that way you can repeat that process and train somebody to do it like you do.
Yeah.
Because that's always one of the biggest rubs that you hear is, nobody does it like me, or
It's
I wish
almost,
I could get another, I clone myself.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something. You hear that from, so
it's
yeah.
almost like getting up to the $1 million mark. It's a huge grind. Getting your numbers in order, and like actually successfully getting enough of clients to do to fill your pipeline and have enough of work for all year. But then once you go from 1 to 5, I'm just kind of using that as a standard metric.
Yeah.
Now you got to learn business all over again. This basically, you got to take everything you learned from that 0 to 1 and put it into systems and processes that can run without you there.
Exactly.
Like you said, you didn't even meet every customer, and
Yeah.
some of us out there in business would like, man, that would be incredible. The thought of not ever meeting a customer.
If you follow me on Instagram, like, anything that you've seen in the last 12 months of this recording, I mean, not anything, but like all the recent stuff is all stuff that I have not met with, sold, designed, produced, or barely stepped a foot on the job site. I'm trying to literally let my entire team just take ownership in what they're doing and have pride in their job, and just produce these consistent high-end results, mind you, too.
See, I think that's another big factor at when you're building a team that, instead of building the product, the outdoor living space in this case, you're building the team that builds the product. And to successfully build the team, that's where you get into that culture, the core values, the autonomy, because nobody wants to be micromanaged all day. Right, I think that's where a lot of people are like, you know what, I'm just better off staying a $1 million business and being really profitable and doing well here.
You have to ask that's an individual question that you need to ask yourself.
Yeah,
because you can make a lot of money at the $1 million mark.
You can, absolutely.
I mean, you can stay right at $1 million, 1.2, and you can pocket $400,000.
Yeah,
you can be lean and mean, and you can make a lot of money that way. You do own your job at that point, and so you're gonna have to make enough in that 15-year sprint between 35 and 40, or however the golden years of earning.
Yep.
And be well off enough to invest properly for a good retirement.
Yeah.
But I think those are all individual questions that you got to ask yourself and reflect, and only you can answer that.
It's
because
right.
What's good for me might not be good for you, and what's good for you might not be good for me.
I think what a lot of people run into in this industry is they spend 15 years being that $1.5 million business, start getting older,
and how am I going to sell my
sell my business, or how can I hire someone to do what I always did, and suddenly they start grappling with these challenges that we're talking about.
They have no systems, they have no processes, they have no book,
and believe me,
if it's a design build, they have no residual income either.
Yeah.
So.
And there's way more to systems and processes than just knowing your numbers, like what we do at SynkedUP. But there's the marketing, there's the culture that really the buck stops with you on that culture and those core values and like what you put up with and the autonomy you give your employee. And one of the key things I think that I want to draw out that you're talking about is how you have these metrics that you watch as the owner of this business to judge people's performance and the success of the business, but then you're letting them go to the point where you're not even meeting with every customer. Like I think that's probably a good are you really letting your people, giving them the autonomy they need to do their job? Maybe I like that because it's like, did you meet with every customer? If you did, then you're probably not done giving up autonomy yet.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
Well, and if you're trying to make that leap, you got to ask yourself constantly, and you have every day or everything that you're doing, you got to ask yourself, is this the job of a CEO?
Yeah.
Or is this the job of a insert position?
Yeah.
Is this the job of a salesperson? Is this the job of a designer? Is this the job of a project manager or a foreman, or fill in the blank?
Yeah.
Like, if it's not, who in your company can you delegate that to.
Yeah.
Or hold accountable to and train that to. Or if you're not quite there, like what do you need to do to grow to the point where you can hire a position to take care of that?
That's right. And yeah, even I can just look at my experience with building SynkedUP and just like the work it's harder to hand off work and create standard operating systems and procedures than it is to just continue doing it yourself, which is why so many people I believe get stuck in this rut where it's just easier to do it myself. I just do it myself, which is perfectly an acceptable way of doing business. It's just that then you got to know that, well, this is what's par for that course.
Yeah, you're bottlenecking. You're the reason that your business isn't growing. And 10 out of 10 times, the reason the business isn't growing is because of the leader.
That's 100%
and they're the bottleneck.
And,
so the sooner you can look into the mirror and realize you're the problem, it's not going to grow.
Yeah, and just accepting the fact that it's going to be harder to build new systems and processes than it's going to be to just fall back into your own rut and keep doing things the same way.
This stuff doesn't happen overnight either. You don't have to just realize, oh gosh, I have to do a hard time out and do that. No, just like do one checklist at a time and just get one thing done and then train somebody to do that. And then when you got some more time, carve it out. Just take your schedule and find one day out of the week where you dedicate 2 hours a week to just
what's the next thing you're going to delegate
working
off your
on
plate?
the business.
Yeah.
But you have to be intentional about it because this stuff doesn't just happen. And if you're not careful, 15 years are going to go by and you haven't grown. And that's the reason why.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. What a story, man. There's a lot of good experienced advice coming from Matt here, guys. What is one of the best pieces of advice that you were ever given?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I've ever been asked that question. The best pieces of advice. I don't think there's any one piece that I can attribute to mountains amount of success. I feel like it's a little bit of everything, because there isn't just one thing that you can take as a silver bullet.
Yeah, that's 100%
and put it to work. You need all 1,000 of them, and you got to put them all together and continually renew them constantly.
Well, one thing I'm thinking about, like, just with your story is, like, even just going back to your early days with, like, realizing that you've got to figure out your numbers, and you hired that customer, like, or that coach, I mean, and that coach advised you.
Yeah.
So when you look at, hey, what was the biggest impact that someone else's input has given me? I mean, just hearing your story, I would point at that might be a contender.
That's up there. If nothing else, and I don't know where I heard this one, but and I probably have heard it 4 different ways, but success leaves clues, and if you want to be successful, just look at somebody that's where you want to be and just go copy what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then just
R&D, rob and duplicate.
Yep. And then just go do that, and then make it your own.
Yeah.
Just put your twist on it, put your flavor on it.
Because even if you see a principle that someone else has done really well with, I wouldn't do that. Like that's
why I put so much out there too. It's because I don't do this because I don't want you to take the stuff. I do it so you can rip me off. That's how I got to where I'm at. And so,
and even doing that, you're still going to make it your own. Like it's not but none of us are duplicates of each other.
There's nothing original in this world.
Yeah.
So get over yourself.
Yeah.
If you think that you own something intellectual.
Yeah.
Because you really don't.
Yeah. That's right. Like that quote I said when I was on your podcast, and it literally was some quote from someone else. It's funny about the. What was it now? Now I'm going to draw a blank. We'll go back and look at that episode.
Oh, the Henry Ford.
Yeah.
Whether you think you can or can't.
Yes,
you're right.
Yes, that one. Exactly. So I can only see, like, building a business from 1 to 5 million definitely requires a leader. You don't maybe have to be a leader to successfully run $1 million business. I mean, you're leading the team that's with you, right?
You can do $1 million easily with you and
2-3 guys.
Yeah. And maybe somebody in the office answering your phones.
Yeah. So what is one of the biggest accomplishments that you've seen in yourself as a leader in your journey and your experience?
I think we kind of touched on it already, and that's just for me to go to some of these built projects that my team has done and know that they built stuff that far surpasses anything that I've ever built personally.
Yeah, that's got to be rewarding.
And knowing that I created this team that's able to do this not only as good as me but better than me.
Yeah.
And just see all of them just be so proud of that creation is just so, that's probably easily hands down the most rewarding thing that I've done.
Yeah, that's
is just to see them succeed and to just see them own that their purpose too, and just know that like they're fulfilling a mission and a purpose as well. And so like I've had to elevate my mission to like just help other people achieve that.
Yeah.
Like that feeling.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the greatest feelings in the world.
I can relate to that in a little bit of a different way for where I'm at on my journey, but like I 100% agree with you. Like there's one of the greatest blessings I think you can live out on this life is when what you do on a day-to-day basis is also the thing that provides meaning and purpose and fulfillment. Like if you can match that up in your life and in your career, like you're one of the most blessed people. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, watch out, because you're destined.
Yeah.
For great things.
And when you're describing your experience with like seeing your team that built something that's better than you've ever built yourself personally, and I see people, like from my experience, like the way I compare that to my experience is like I see people that come into SynkedUP and need help with their numbers, and a year later I talk to them and they tell me, I've taken an owner's draw for the first time. My trucks are all paid off. I'm spending more time with my wife. I'm giving my guys bonuses, like, and
setting goals and they're achieving them. And you know that you were that vehicle to kind of get them out of their own way.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
that's one of the greatest feelings.
It's my high. It's my fuel, you know, and, but at the end of the day, what we do is it's just a tool, because it's like if you buy a skid loader but refuse to turn it on and just keep on using the shovel, it's a worthless hunk of metal.
Oh yeah.
The same thing with SynkedUP. It's a tool. Like it can do amazing things for you, but you have to use it. If you don't use it, it's worthless. If you use it, it can generate a tremendous return on your investment. Like the same way that machine can. Like instead of paying 3 guys, you have 1 machine and a guy. It's just comparable in my mind. But man, this has been a great session. I appreciate your letting me pick your brain and dig under the surface of your story, because every time you see a guy that's experienced the growth that you have, the team that you have, like there's always a ton of gold nuggets in there, and I've really enjoyed this session. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure. I love talking shop and appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you for putting your faith and trust in us at SynkedUP, and that's something I don't take lightly, and I can't wait to be a small part of your story in your future.
No, I'm blessed to be a part of it as well, and I look forward to seeing your success with helping even more contractors, get out of their own way and knowing their numbers, and just I'm happy to be a small part of yours as well.
Well,
so
thanks.
Thank you.
No, this is going to be a great time here this next couple of days. Thanks for listening in. And before we close off, let's give our audience the clue to where to find you.
I'm most active on Instagram, and you can find me at the Yardist, which is the _Yardist.
Okay.
So, yep.
And then there's Matt or Hiner Outdoor Living, right?
There's Hiner Outdoor Living, which is all no spaces or anything. Hiner Outdoor Living, HINER.
Okay.
And then we're on YouTube and now on TikTok. So
yeah, and you're putting out some serious content on YouTube. So definitely go check them out if you want to watch the journey. Definitely someone to model and emulate here and learn from. And it's been a great session. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Weston.
Okay. Cheers.